What's up, guys? It's Sucha here, and today I'm going to talk to you about something that I hear just a lot, and something that was on the top of my mind for so long, and that is portion control or portion sizes. And just to give you some context, my background is not only with fasting and nutrition, but also disordered eating. I spent years of my life experiencing disordered eating, specifically binging. And it's quite literally because I would restrict myself of food, worrying about portion sizes and portion control. And then the second I gave in to maybe a bad food or a little too much food, I would have the fuck it, I already fucked up mentality, which is basically saying, I already messed up, so I'm just gonna eat the entire world. But this actually stems from our animal part of our brain. You see, we have our human brain, we have our animal part of our brain. Our animal part of our brain is there for good reason. It wants us to survive. It has these survival mechanisms. However, it's not really well integrated with our modern day lifestyle, which is why we need to use our human part of our brain to actually cope with our emotions, to use its intelligence to create good habits and good brain patterns. Unfortunately, our brain doesn't know the difference between a good habit and a bad habit. It just knows survival and creation. So with survival, we are no longer in a time and place where we need to survive from food and really hoard all the food we can because we have an abundance of food. But because we have an abundance of food and not all of those foods are actually the most satiating for us, in fact, a lot of those foods are literally hacking our biology and chemistry and making us addicted to those foods and substances. So that can skew a lot. We actually need to make sure we're properly satiating ourselves so we no longer have to have our animal part of our brain freak out and lead to things like disordered eating or binge eating. Of course, this can have a lot to do with our appearance, but that's what the portion control stems from, because at the end of the day, yes, it's a really big part of, results is calories in, calories out. But it's very hard to know, exactly what amount of calories. It's very hard to know exactly how many calories we should be consuming because the quality of the calorie matters. When we're eating, if we're fasting, that matters. How much energy expenditure, so many things really have a big play into this. So bringing this back to our primal roots, right? There was no such thing as portion control or portion sizes. Our ancestors went through periods of fasting for long periods of time. They were just hunting and trying to gather food, whatever they could find, and then feasting. When they had the food, they didn't have a fridge to store it in. They didn't have packaged foods to store it or access whenever they wanted with a 2-year shelf life. They wanted to just consume all the food, have it satiate them. It was fresh, and they were just getting all of the nutrients in. Let's talk about what they actually consumed. Ancestrally, we hunted and then we gathered seasonally, right? So maybe the fruits and sometimes the nuts that were there seasonally, most likely during the summer, most likely when we needed the most energy, that was available to us, and even like honey. But we hunted, and that was a constant because there's always prey for us. So when we went for these animals that we hunted, we didn't just go for the muscle meat. These days, if you go to a grocery store, the lean cuts of meat are really highlighted because everyone's so scared of fat. But ancestrally, we not only went for the fattier parts of the animal, but we literally thrived off of animal fat. We actually left the leaner parts of the meat for dogs or even left it for vultures. Similarly, even tigers and lions, when they go after their meat, they go straight for the organs, the guts, and the fattiest parts of the animal. This is because it's so satiating. This is also why ketosis makes sense, because we were in a state of fueling off of fats that kept us energetic for so long. It allowed us to really heal and restore our body and make it stronger. It increased our human growth hormone by going through those periods of fasting and then feasting with a bunch of fat and also protein. So the way we eat now is completely skewed, and this is also a big factor of why we're leaving so many times after eating still not satiated. Personally, unfortunately, I went through this, and just to kind of lean back in on my plant-based to animal-based journey, I spent years, obviously not just pescatarian, but also vegan, full-on vegan. And during that time, I thought I was thriving. Epigenetics is a huge factor, and the placebo effect. So I fully believe that I was thriving with this diet, so I'm sure I was able to hack a lot of my biology that way. However, there were still some really essential fats and animal proteins that I was missing out on that ancestrally were in my favor. So as I was transitioning, it was a full-on 2-year transition of really not only just getting to full-on animal-based, but just being okay with introducing the animal foods. So I slowly started including some eggs and some seafood, and all of a sudden, I was just craving it. And I felt guilty, unfortunately, because coming from a vegan background, having any animal foods, you're given a lot of shame about it. But, I was kind of just dealing with this secretly, that I was just craving these foods the second I started to eat them. And then came around red meat, and all of a sudden, I was literally salivating. It felt like I had never even eaten food before. And basically what it was is I was experiencing true satiation, animal fats mostly, and then proteins that it was craving for so long. And from there, so many things changed that I thought, were just a part of my lifestyle or my journey in terms of mental health. So to break that down a little bit more, some of the things I was dealing with was not just physical bloating and gut health stuff and breaking out and having a lot of hair loss and having an irregular period, but mentally I was just so addicted to sugars and carbs. And I'm talking about the refined kind. And even if it was fruit, it was I just couldn't stop. And I just identified with having a sweet tooth. I thought, this is me, this is Sucha, I love sweets, I have to have dessert. This is just something that I can't get past. But the second I started including animal foods in my diet, it was so many of those cravings started to subside, especially when I went all in and really started taking out everything besides just primarily the animal foods, and then occasionally some fruit or non-toxic veggies. But besides that, my cravings just started to subside, and I didn't have the bloat anymore. And it was my energy levels were even more, regulated. The fasting helped a lot, but this just took it to the next level. So a combination of the fasting and then actually feasting. So, when I did eat the animal foods and fats, really learning about the fasting and feasting, I no longer tried to create a little bit of a portion or thought of portion size. I was you know what? I'm hungry, and I'm gonna just eat as much as I can to fully satiate myself. And most recently, even if I have a little inkling of thinking about food, I just do it. I run it. I eat a bunch of more food, and it's animal meat, high fat animal meat too, even if it's putting butter or beef tallow on my food. And with that, I started to notice, I woke up the next day and I wasn't super bloated, and I didn't feel like I was gaining weight. In fact, I've been losing weight and building more lean muscle. And I feel like I've been eating even more. But that idea of just not restricting myself, my body and my brain was no longer in survival mode. I was no longer, making my animal brain so scared. And I've been using my human brain to feel so comfortable knowing that the food is always there. And fully satiating my hormones, my gut health, my entire, being with these animal foods and fats has been a game changer. Regardless if you are animal-based or plant-based or somewhere in between, satiation is going to be huge. So, however you want to eat, you need to figure out what is optimal satiation for you. And most likely, more often than not, it's the fats in your diet and also proteins. Those are literally the building blocks for your body and brain, an entire being. I talk about this a little bit, but just so your body doesn't have the mechanism to create fats and proteins if those aren't coming in. If carbs are not coming in, your body actually has something called gluconeogenesis, where it can make its own carbs to fuel energy from. With fats and proteins, it doesn't have that mechanism, so you need to actively make sure you're getting a bunch of fat and then, at least moderate protein. So Find out what that is, and most likely it will be some version of fats. So when I was vegan, I was able to, try to lean towards the keto, although that's very hard to do when you're vegan without having to depend on processed foods, even like protein powders or peanut butter or, just different things that are kind of condensed version, not naturally occurring ingredients. But with this, find what satiates you. And when you eat, treat it like a feast. And I highly encourage, fasting. Of course, this is not medical advice, but everyone should be able to try to fast at least, some period throughout the month to give your body that full rest and recovery. And then when you eat, don't eat trying to limit yourself with those portions. In the short term, your body might have to get used to it, but in the long term, your body is going to thank you because you're taking yourself out of survival mode and you're living in abundance, even with food. This is exactly why fasting healed me and eating animal-based healed me. All right, guys, I hope that information helped. Seriously, the biggest game changer to realize that you don't need to live your life thinking about portions, and you can actually just live your fucking life, feast like a champ, train like a champ, fast like a champ, and just go all out with everything and really live. So if you enjoy that, please give this a thumbs up and comment down below with any questions you have, and also subscribe if you haven't already. It really supports me. I can't wait to keep sharing this knowledge and just my journey with you. So thank you so much for tuning in.